Hi, my name is Bree and welcome back to my channel. So I am filming this in the morning and I'm exhausted. It's like 8:30 in the morning on a Monday morning, no less. And I'm like so dead already. Like I didn't even have my coffee yet. But I figured, I want to be on time for a video this week. So I figured, you know what, I'm going to have to film it Monday morning so I can edit it Tuesday morning and then have it out for Thursday. So you're welcome. So it's November and you guys know what that means. It's time for my October wrap up. I actually didn't really follow too much of what I wanted to read this month, and I actually figured out that I am 100% a mood reader. Like I tried reading some of the books that I wanted to read this month, but then I was like, but then there's this one. So didn't follow along too well with that. But the first one we're going to start with is The Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde. I gave that one a 4-star rating. So I didn't find out till after I read this book that I read the censored version when I wanted to read the uncensored version. So, I'm going to have to go back and read the uncensored version because, screw the publishers for censoring it. But then again, this book was published, I believe, back in the early 1900s. So yeah, it's gonna be some censoring, especially since they were hinting at some homosexual themes in the story. And I was reading an article where he actually had to censor a lot of the homosexual themes. So a boy Dorian Gray could possibly be gay. I mean, love the representation, but I hate that it was so censored. So I'm going to have to go back and read the uncensored version. But this one follows multiple characters, but it really follows Dorian Gray. He gets a portrait painted of himself, and he just falls in love with how young he looked and stuff. So he makes a deal where he does not want to age. So he'll remain the handsome young man forever. But however, because he made this deal, he slowly starts to go crazy, lose his humanity. So that's kind of the price that he had to pay. We kind of watched him go on a downward spiral, and it was actually very interesting. I really enjoyed this book. It was a nice classic. But yeah, I'm totally gonna read the uncensored version because I want some gayness. I want some gayness in classic literature. So next up, these next two, I've read the short stories. They were free on Kindle. So I'm you know what? I'll read them. They're novellas. I'll give it a try. So the first one I read was Ankle Snatcher by Grady Hendrick, and I gave that 3 stars. So this one follows a story where there's the monster under the bed that grabs your ankle and pulls you under. So we follow this man. He's having I think it was a one night stand with some woman, and so they had the one night stand, and she ended up getting captured by the monster under her bed, and he's being investigated for her murder. I didn't think it was too scary. They were marketed as horror. It was creepy, yes, but I don't know. It didn't give me the super chill, scary chill. So I wasn't too much of a fan of that. But it was definitely an interesting concept, and I actually kind of like the writer, his writing style. So I kind of want to go check out his other work. I do know that he is kind of a popular author. I've heard of his name before. So I mean, I would definitely check out his other writing. So the next novella that I read was It Waits in the Woods by Josh Malerman. I think that's how you say his name. And I also gave that a 3 stars. So this one I was a little confused about. I feel there wasn't enough time to world build because it was so short. I think if it was made into a full-blown novel, then I think it would have done a lot better. But anyways, this young girl, she's trying to find her sister. So her sister kind of went off into the woods and was never to be seen again. So she decided to run away from home when she turned 18 and decided to camp out in the woods and try to find her sister. Well, turned out she does find her sister being like captured by like a monster and like having to escape the monster and save her sister. It was okay. It was just okay. Yeah, I think it was long. If it was longer, then I think I would have enjoyed it more if I had learned more about like the lore and like why the thing happened, like the supernatural like element of it. I feel like, I don't know, I was not a fan, but then I was also a fan, so I'm like in the middle. I'm neutral on it. The next up I read was The Summer of Broken Wolf by K.L. Walter, and I gave that a 4.5 stars. This was the highest rating out of all the books that I read this month, and I honestly didn't think I would enjoy it as much as I did. So we follow this family. They go to like this house where it's like a summer home where like they always like go to vacation every summer, and turned out it's one of her cousin's wedding, so they're doing like a bunch of wedding stuff, and like she just broke up with like a boyfriend that was like kind of mean to her, so like she was still kind of like trying to find herself. And we also deal with the aspect of grief. So she lost her older sister the last time she was at the family vacation, like her sister was there, so she was also kind of adjusting to like the loss of her sister and like the grief of the sister. So anyway, she ends up meeting a boy there, and the boy happened to be the groom's stepbrother, half-brother, something like that. So they end up falling in love. It's a sweet little love story. They're trying to figure out how to make things work after they leave the vacation house, because I believe they were only there for like a week for the wedding. It was so sweet. I love the cute little romantic scenes. I love like like they have like a family like water gun fight. It was so fun. It was such a good read. I also really liked how the author tackled grief, because it was just so like up and down. Like some days she would be fine and other times she wouldn't. Like something would trigger her with her grief. And I thought the author did such a good job at that, and it's such like a hard topic to like really nail down. But I think the grief like was really good in this book, and that's why I gave it such a high rating. So yeah, I really enjoyed this book, and I actually read it on Kindle, so I actually might buy like the physical copy to reread it again because I just loved it so much. Number 5, I read Rudder Grange by F.R. Stockton. I gave that 4-star rating. It followed like the first like couple stories kind of follow like a husband and wife. They were trying to look for a home and a living, so they end up converting a boat into a home and living on a boat rather than getting like a actual physical house, and that was actually pretty common back then. So we follow that, and then we follow some of the characters. I'm actually using this novel, I'm actually using one of the chapters to write a paper for my American Realism class. So I read the book so I can kind of pick what chapter I wanted to do. But the chapter I wanted to do follows Pomona, where she is a character represented by romanticism, and her newly wedded husband, Jones, is represented as like a realist character. So Pomona kind of like reads a lot of like romanticism like novels and wants to like pretend to be like some of the characters. Like she wants to be like, she's pretending to be like royalty. So her husband brings her to like asylum to kind of have like a comment like, well, if you want to act out like the characters in your book, this is where you're gonna end up. That opened Pomona to be like, oh, like okay, like there's a clear line between like what you read in a novel and what happened in real life. So I have to write a paper about that, and I figured, you know, like that was actually a really good chapter. Like it does talk a lot about those themes, and yeah, so I figured I would just read the whole book, and it was actually really good. Definitely different writing style, considering it was published like in like the late 1800s. So it was definitely an adjustment, but you know, I actually really enjoyed it. So number 6, I read A Blackness Absolute by Caitlin Marcrew, and I gave that a 4-star rating. So this was like a bunch of short stories, like horror short stories in the collection. There were a lot of them that I really enjoyed, and then some of them not so much, which is why I did give it a 4-star rating. But I just love like how like each of the short stories, they weren't like connected in any way, but like they were so unique and different from like any other horror short stories that I read. I was like, oh, like this is actually really good. And I also really liked the way the author writes. I thought it was so like beautiful, straight to the point. I feel like in like a short amount of time with the short stories, I got to know like the characters and I got to know what was going on compared to like the other two shorter stories that I read, novellas that I read. So that's why I really enjoyed this book. So number 7 is Together We Rot by Skylar Arnett, and I gave that 3.5-star rating. So we follow Will and we also follow Elwood. So these two characters, they used to be best friends, but then once Will's mother died, she claimed that Elwood's family killed her mother, so they stopped talking. So Elwood's family comes from like a cult, like a religious cult. Like his father's the pastor and his mother, I don't know exactly what she does, but she does what a pastor wife does. So when he turned 18, part of his job was to kind of like take over the church with his father, but we don't really understand why, because his father seemed like he wants the power and he wants to be in control. So to me that didn't make sense, but then it made sense later on in the story, and I'm like, oh my god, wow. Elwood does not want to work with the church and his father, so he ended up running away, and he runs to Will, and they team up and they like kind of figure out like the death of her mother, and kind of like run away from the pastor's, the family. Like religious cult, we get to take down a religious cult. I love that. And we also got like a lot of supernatural elements that I was not expecting. It was just a little like strange. It was definitely strange. It was definitely something I was not expecting at the end of the story that just kind of caught me off guard, and I was like, what? But it was just like, it was still worth it. It was still worth it. It's something that you guys are not going to expect, but it was still good. It was still good. That's all I'm going to say. The only reason why I gave it a 3.5-star rating was because I felt like the romance was really pushed, because first it was like the friend to enemies to lovers kind of trope, and I don't know, I'm not too much of a fan of that. And then I also didn't feel like I got like enough of an explanation with the supernatural element of the story, so that's why I rounded it to 3.5. But yeah, it was still a good read. I still would recommend it. So number 8 is God Killer by Hannah Canner, and I gave that 4 stars. So I know last month I was reading it, like I started to read it back in September, like the end of September, and then I ended up finishing it in October. I took a little bit of a break from it because it was just so heavy into the fantasy world that it was just like, okay, like I need to like be like more aware while I'm reading this so I don't get confused. So like I like to read at night typically, so this was not a read that you can read at night. This is something where you have to like read like first thing in the morning after you had your cup of coffee or tea, and like really focus on every single word, every single sentence in the story, or else you will get confused. But other than that, it was so good. I love the fantasy world the author created. Like, there was never a moment where I was like really confused. And I feel like with some fantasy books, it's like you get confused with the world building, but like, this author, she nailed it. And I loved all the characters. All these characters were like rounded out and just like, loved it. It's just all tied up in the end. Obviously, there's gonna be more. I think there's gonna definitely be a book 2. But like sometimes in theory, when it's like a series, you don't get the full answers that you want from book 1, so that way they can get you to read book 2. But I feel like with this, we wrapped it up so well that I feel like it could be a standalone on its own, but like also, there's some like the plot that needs to be tied up, but the main plot was tied up in book 1, which was fabulous. Wow. Loved it. Go read it. I have nothing more to say, nothing more to gush about. The last book that I read for October was Crick Crack Monkey by Marley Hodge. I gave that a 2-star rating. I was not too big of a fan of this book, so I had to read this for my non-European literature class, and it was like a Caribbean novel, like Caribbean literature, and I thought it was very, like, it was okay. Like, I felt like I didn't really know the characters too much except for the one character, T. The only thing that I really enjoyed about this book was she ended up creating like an alter ego named Helen, like midway through the book, and I thought that was interesting because like T kind of represented living with her aunt that was like poorer, like on a poorer side, like a lower class, and then she ended up moving in with her other aunt who was more of like a higher class. So T represented the lower class and Helen represented the more higher class, which I thought was really good. I was not thrilled about the ending. The ending I was not like really happy about. It felt so rushed and I was just like, oh, we're done? Or that's it? Yeah, I mean, it was interesting. It just kind of followed T like throughout her life, like the different stages, like when she was a kid, when her mother died, and then like it followed her through like elementary school, middle school, high school, and then the end of the book. So it was just okay. I was not really a big fan of it, but if I had to read it again, then I would. But it's not something I would read like for pleasure, if that makes sense. So yeah, that's all I read for October. So I'm not gonna like do like what I did last time. I'm not gonna be like, oh, for November I'm gonna read these books, because I know if I do that, then it's not gonna actually stick, and I don't want to get you guys hoped up when it comes to me doing this video. However, since we're already in the second week of November, I actually finished one book. I actually read Britney Spears' memoir, and I'm going to be doing a full, like my own separate video on that, because I do want to talk about it. So yeah, that's it for today's video. If you liked it, please give me a thumbs up. Comment down below what you guys read for October, and if you read any of these books, what were your thoughts on them? I would love to know. And if you're not already, please subscribe to my channel, and don't forget to ring that bell so you don't miss any of my upcoming videos. Until next time, I will see you guys then. Bye!